We're going to be starting here in just one more minute. Let some people load in while I am getting all of the links shared out. Thanks for being here. All right, I'm going to let people load in, waiting on Sheila.
Coffee, kitchen, cups, grinding wakes you up, silent siege with wings, star is spiraling, nothing ever changes. Not just rearranges what you feel. You can find me here. Asthma, wheeze, and cough. While you're sleeping off.
Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Sheila's going to be joining us just a minute. She was on her way home, and she'll be setting up as soon as she gets there. So you are listening to the Laughter After Trauma Show. My name is Deanna. I am your host. I'm a speaker, educator, and coach that brings light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. I am a thriver after intimate partner violence, and my journey led me to find the beauty and the laughter in healing. I believe we are all magic and we are all self-healers. And the Laughter After Trauma podcast showcases everyday people who triumph in the face of trauma. We provide hope, awareness, connection, and community, and we share the laughter after. On the last Tuesday of every month, I come to you with Sheila, who is an energy healer and a massage therapist and a life coach. And she does a lot of awesome work in this arena. And we like to provide tools that we can give you and resources that we can give you in the area of trauma. And just have an open and frank conversation with anybody who wants to get up and chit chat with us. This month, I have been focusing in on domestic violence awareness because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, among awareness for lots of other things too for October. But I focus in on this because of my own personal journey. And my guests this month have all had some experience in this arena, and it has led them all into different places and different ways that they have expanded their life and served. They've all been led to a place of service. And so I thought that was interesting. And so I wanted to expand on this by bringing in the topic of what it looks like to be groomed as a youth when you're growing up. And it's often maybe that grooming that happens inside your household, in a culture, in the place where you grew up, where it maybe not be intentional, or it might not have been meant to hurt you. There is grooming that is very intentional, but there are different types. And so we're going to kind of open up a conversation about that today too. So excuse me, I'm a little congested. The weather's been changing here, so it's got me a little kooky. So I'm going to bring Sheila up here to video if you're ready, Sheila, and let's get the conversation started. We got to chat a little bit earlier today about some of this, and I think that the topic is pretty exciting. And she's read this book and I'm reading this book, and I tried to reach out to the author today, but she didn't respond. It's kind of last minute, and sometimes those things take a little bit. But hopefully, I get to get her back here because the book that I'm right at the end. I haven't quite finished it yet. Sheila has finished it. It's called Groomed, and it's a book that I think everyone, if you're interested in kind of learning and diving a little deeper into maybe understanding why the things that we accept and the behaviors that we accept, or sometimes the people that we might attract, have to do with the way we were groomed in our childhood. And there are various forms of the ways that that happens, and being able to recognize it may help you recognize why your patterns fall the way they do, and why sometimes we might find ourselves in a situation where we've accepted behaviors that we should not have accepted. Um, so I think that when we look at this and we talk about the different types that were brought up in the book, and like I said, would love to totally have any of you guys come up and join the conversation, because I do like for this last show of the month to be an open forum for anybody who has questions or has things that they'd like to add to the conversation, or things that they may have learned in regards to this as well. Um, so I'm guessing Sheila's still getting her stuff set up over there. So because I invited her,
Yeah,
and
I'm okay. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
okay now.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
here.
all right. All right,
Okay.
no problem. Yeah, hey Monica.
So,
Welcome, Monica. Welcome, welcome. How are you? Oh,
Okay, can you hear me now?
oh yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, so I got a question. Now,
Okay.
okay, oh Lord, am I supposed to do that? Okay, let's see. Um okay. So my question is, you guys know that I'm a private detective,
Right.
and I'm on Fireside as well. I've got my own show. But I had something interesting happen the other day.
Uh-huh.
I am in the process of opening up a resource center and a shelter for victims of human trafficking. I've been involved with human trafficking for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I had somebody from another very large human trafficking organization give me, in her words, some advice. And
Okay.
this is what her advice was, and this is what I've got a question and I'm making a statement.
Okay.
She told me that, she said, I looked at your information. I love what you're doing for victims of human trafficking. She says, but you're going to have a hard time getting as much funding because you stated that your shelter is going to provide emergency housing for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. She said, you cannot put those different categories of people, women, in the same emergency shelter housing situation because they all have different needs and different traumas. So, my question to you, Deanna, is that I got what she was saying,
Hmm.
but I'm under the impression from my research, and the reason why we're doing this shelter and the resource center is
Hmm.
that isn't sexual assault that also happens in domestic violence situation as well as in human trafficking. So that's my question, because it kind of caught me off guard, and I'm like, we want to help people. But it,
Hmm.
it was interesting to me that she wanted me to separate everybody because she didn't consider domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking all to be categorized in the same area. So that's my question, and I'll be quiet.
Okay, so this is what I have to say about that. And I have a little bit of experience, but not a lot of experience working with some nonprofits. And I have found that these things tend to be separated. Now, I don't know if they need to be separated because of the trauma, because in my opinion, I do think that these people are capable of seeing one another, and helping one another even
Right.
as victims. But
Hmm.
as far as funding is concerned and grant
Hmm.
writing, that might be
Hmm.
where she's coming from because I have noticed that grant writing becomes very specific. And if
Yeah.
they've separated it, like federal funding, if they've
Right.
separated it, then you might have a bigger issue. I'd love to talk to you about this behind the scenes and off of here because there are a few organizations. So the book that we're reading and the one that I'm talking about tonight, this woman
Hmm.
has a shelter for
So one
sex
that we
trafficking.
are talking about tonight.
That is correct. I'm sorry.
That's
But it
okay.
is. It is about. She has a whole foundation. She
Okay.
started with two other women, and then there is another one called Thistle Farms, and they have a model that they do, and in her model, she allows people to duplicate her model. I'm not sure
Okay.
exactly how it works.
Let's make
Um,
sure we connect, Deanna, for real,
yeah.
because I mean, I just did a $20 million cap raise. We're building a 30,000 square foot building.
Mm,
Yeah, we're going to be offering housing for 30 to 40 human trafficking individuals, and then the resource center that's going to offer every type of service: financial, drug, mental health counseling, job readiness, all of that. So let's
love it.
connect off here too. But thank you so much for answering that question. That makes perfectly good sense. I'll be
Right.
quiet.
Oh, it's okay. Feel free to
Yeah,
talk. I like
no,
having people up. And you
those are
guys,
good
if you guys
questions.
don't know, Monica has a really great show at 7 o'clock, right before mine, 7 o'clock Central. So we're Central right now. For me, it's 8:12. So you guys should check it out. Some Tuesdays I get in there, and some Tuesdays I don't, depending on my crazy day. But her show is amazing. Um, and believe me, she talks on all kinds of topics. It's not just about private investigating. She talks about life, and she gets very real. So it's really always a good conversation over there. Sheila, did you have any input on what she was asking about?
You should really connect with Elizabeth, this author of
Hmm.
Groomed, Monica, because her Sella Foundation, they specifically support women and unfortunately, young women who are victims of the sexual trafficking, and helping them to get counseling if they want to relocate, if they want to restart their lives. So I'm asked perhaps someone in her organization could give you, perhaps someone in her organization could at least maybe give you some pointers
I
on how
Yeah, I
to
just
work with.
wanted to tell you real quick, Sheila. I actually know her, and I've done a tour
Oh,
with her organization, so I know who she is. So
got
thanks so
it.
much. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. I know who she is. Appreciate you.
Good. All
Got it.
right.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about what we were talking earlier, Sheila, because I do think that this topic about being groomed and having this something that was part of our upbringing, even possibly, and how we internalize the things and the beliefs and the guidance that we got. I kind of looked at it like that in some areas. I think I think parents in their guidance aren't always necessarily understanding that what they're doing is possibly grooming someone or grooming their children in certain ways. It's very difficult to like raise a little human being to be a responsible adult and not put anything on them, in the sense of, helping them to form beliefs. And sometimes the way that's presented or the way it's internalized then becomes, a form of grooming that later in life they begin to be open to or accepting of certain other behaviors. Am I on track here? Because I might be sounding like I'm rambling.
Yeah, no, I think we innocently, if we are parents and you don't have to be a parent. You could be an aunt, you could be an uncle, you could be um, a godparent, it could be your best friend's kids. So I think we don't even realize how, we're grooming our kids. And here's like a perfect example. And I have I think there's I think there's about 4 or 5 types of grooming if we want to just quickly go over them. And if anyone listening wants to identify with that or not, if, you can decide however you want this to go, Deanna. But like a perfect example is, when I was married, can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Okay. All right. When I was married, my former husband had a close friend, and I noticed how she would interact with her kids and how she would interact with me, and she was very limited in like physical affection and showing affection. And same with her kids. And I noticed the boundaries that she set with her kids were, I don't know if I would judge them as like, I don't know how to say it. It was just, I was like, wow, there's a lot of boundaries there. When my kids were little, I would hug them, I would kiss them. I'm very affectionate, and I never thought anything of it. But she always offered choices with her kids. So like naturally, if I wanted to give her kids a hug when we went in to visit, they were always offered the chance to hug me or not. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Where's that, And I found out there was something in her history. And so she wanted to make sure that, because the history was involving a family member, if you catch my drift, there was a sensitivity to how to drawing the line on whether or not her kids should, accept or not accept any type of affection, even if it's just, someone they know wanting to offer a hug. So it's made me a little aware how even as, innocently as an affectionate parent, if you just, you want to give your kids a hug or a kiss as they get older and their boundaries might not support your willingness to offer affection, even if it's coming from the most innocent place, you might be grooming your kids that in order to show an adult respect, or in order to show an adult, recognize an adult, you must hug them or give them a kiss, or, and it seems so innocent, but then we groom our kids to accept affection even when it doesn't make them, even when it makes them uncomfortable, because that's what you do. Like an adult's overt, gestures override your comfort level. And so again, it seems like something innocent, but that is how somebody who's very premeditated grooms a child or a young adult. It starts out so innocently, and then it just grows and grows and grows.
Yeah, I just had this conversation with my daughter because we were talking on this, because I've been kind of talking about this for a little bit. It came up a couple weeks ago in one of my shows, and it kind of clicked and made me start thinking about this from being raised fundamental, in that fundamentalist type of way, and in a patriarchal kind of way, that some of the impact of that and what it had on her as, the guest. And and then I was talking with my daughter about this because we're very similar. We're from the South. For here, everything is you hug everybody. I kiss my parents, hello and goodbye. We kiss on the lips. It's not weird here. So I don't, so you automatically have done that. But because of that, it's the point at which the kids lose autonomy in choice to be able to receive that or not. And I do think that is a form of grooming, and it does make them a little, it does set them up a little differently, because when you go, no, kiss everybody bye, and you expect them to go around the room and tell everybody bye and give everybody a kiss and give everybody a hug. If the kid is doing it willingly, great, fine. One of my granddaughters, she won't leave. She has to get unbuckled from her car seat if she doesn't get her hug. She's like, I didn't get my hug. I didn't get a kiss and bye. Okay, fine. Well, she's doing that willingly. But if you find those lines or some level of discomfort, but there were also times that, the older, like my family has a lot of kids. And so there's a broad range of ages, I am 16 years older than the youngest sibling. So, my sisters that were next to me are 10 and 12 years, not the one right next to me, but the middle ones. They're 10 and 12 years younger than me. So when I was getting married, they were 6 years old, you know? Um, and so they were young and they got to this place where, they wanted to be best buddies with my boyfriend. And he would joke with them and be like, "Oh, I'm going to marry you," and stuff. And then they were all upset because when we got married, right? Now nothing happened there, but similar things happened and we all just laugh and think it's cute. And then they grow up and realize how weird that was. And, but we have had issues with this in my family, with my kids and my daughter being molested in a situation where she was sitting on somebody's lap all the time and hugging on them and whatever. And if that person is a predator, then it's going to become grooming at whatever phase that picks up. It wasn't 6, but that is something that would happen, and we groomed her to allow it, or to say, yeah, this was an authority figure. It's your uncle. You have to, whatever. This was something
I
comfortable.
mean, but
And
that is so hard, Jana. I mean, because at the time, first of all, you didn't know what his intentions were, and
no,
certainly she didn't. And the question becomes, well, when you're in this situation, how do you politely say to an adult, could you please not have my daughter in your lap? Or could you, because then you risk how they might react, but then they might think that you were thinking something that they weren't thinking, and that causes a lot of friction.
well,
However,
I mean, it may not have
you
even
have,
been.
yeah,
It may not have even been his intention at the time. That's not the point. I'm just saying that that our very open and acceptance of that, and making it a part of what the kids were expected to do, might not be the best way. Now with my grandkids, we don't do that. I mean, it's not that we're not openly affectionate. They hug and kiss everybody, but if they don't want to, we don't make them. We don't tell them, well, you got to kiss so and so goodbye. If they don't feel like it, we let them know, well, you don't have to. That's your choice. It's not the only way you can show somebody that you love them, or whatever. So I think that I just think, like, in the back of my mind, without really, I'm not blaming that for, whatever happened. It's a whole slew of things that went into that. But you know what I'm saying? I just do think that there was just a little,
yeah.
right. There was just a little piece in there that I think, oh, we probably need to do that a little differently. We probably need to tweak that a little bit and make it a little better, so that's all.
Well, and the thing is, we make the little tweaks with our kids and helping to educate them with what we know now. And those little things mean so much as all the little things that are going in the opposite direction mean so much too. So I really feel like it's important to kind of elevate the awareness of, this is not an obvious thing. Like, the whole point of her book is to show us exactly how, I don't want to say not obvious, but how
Subtle.
easily this flies
Right.
under the radar.
Right.
How subtle it is, how easily. And so there is a lot of guilt, I think, with the victims or the victims' families or parents of, why didn't I see this, or how couldn't I have known this? I think there's also a lot of denial. If it's a parent, I think there's a pattern with the other parent not believing it, that this is happening. So it's very subtle, and that's why there's so much guilt. It's because how could I have seen this now that I know what I know? Do you want to go into some of the patterns of grooming?
Yeah, I had them listed
name
too,
them?
so go for it, because I kind of typed them out into my iPad because I wanted to be able to kind of go through them so people would be able to recognize it. You know what I mean?
Well, you're so organized. So do you want to read them all off and then we can just go back
I
to
can.
each one and maybe give some characteristics
Yeah.
of each of them?
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I can.
Okay.
So, well, it's because I don't have the physical copy of the book, so I'm glad you have the physical copy because mine's on a Kindle. So, so that's why I kind of just said I'm gonna just type these out so we can have them in front of us. So, groom for appearances, groom to be invisible, groom to endure, groomed for judgment, and groomed for financial fear. And honestly,
Yeah.
I think that if we give some characteristics of these, no one's going to probably find themselves in every one of them, but you probably will find at least two that you'll kind of
Yeah.
recognize and go, "Oh, yeah, I've kind of felt like that before. I can see where that can send you off in a direction or maybe, allow some."
Or just an awareness. Like maybe if you know, well, so let's go. I'll just start with one and we can just alternate maybe just to
Okay.
get the language out there. And then if anyone like Stacy, if you want to come up after we've gone through them and share which, maybe if you want to take some notes and just listen if you're watching the replay, maybe you might find this helpful. So groom for appearances, the quotation for this chapter is you exist only to make me look good. So think about some of these things. If this is a way that you were raised, like did you have a family that really never asked you what you wanted, but they would make suggestions about what you should do and contradict your desires? Women who are groomed for appearances know how to respond to the powerful people in their lives. They respond to other people's expectations before their own needs every time. A quotation you might hear if you are groomed for appearances is, you sit there and look pretty and I'll just take care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound like something that you might have heard? Some other things to think about if you were groomed for appearances. Did your family act one way when you were outside the house and another when you were in private? This was a big one in my family. Were there family or personal secrets that everyone explicitly or implicitly agreed to hide? I know my dad was a big person to say, don't air your dirty laundry in public. And there was certainly one way that my parents behaved towards me in public. And then once we got in the car, there was a completely different way that maybe a family member might have behaved. And then the last couple of things on this one is you were taught through words and actions that what you wanted wasn't as important as what your groomer wanted. Your value came not from who you were as an individual, but from how you absorbed and reflected that person. So, for example, adults. So the author was saying, I've heard so many stories growing up with adults who would scream at the breakfast table, berate their children in the car. That was a big one in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And then paste on a perfect smile when they would go out in public. Maintaining like control, in public is something that shows up and with women who, or maybe children who feel they're intuitively being controlled. One thing that I highlighted in this chapter, and also when you're being controlled like that for appearances, it's really hard to follow your own intuition. So think about that. If you're an empath in a family where you're being groomed for appearances, you might have been labeled sensitive, or what's wrong with you? Why can't you just do it this way? Think about now, so if you're an adult and you're drawn to narcissists, chances are they're drawn to you. Their radar picks up that you're eager to please, that you're carefully cultivated to make them look good. And then eventually what happens with the person who's in this category of being groomed for appearances, that after being controlled for so long to do what other people desire, is they just lose sight of who they are. So they have a hard time awakening their desires and finding their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so I love that. So and and I think that you're going to find some of these crossover because when I was reading this and I read about groom for appearances, and you kind of lose yourself in there, and then the next one she talks about is groom to be invisible, and that's that kind of place where you're supposed to be like, seen and not heard situation. And so it says the message that you heard is your existence doesn't matter to me. And so um in here, when she gives us some questions to consider, she talks about I'm trying to see this with my glasses. Sorry, y'all. But like this, like where things like, I didn't ask for you to be born, or I wish you had never been born. If you heard like negative messages in that regard, or if anyone in your life, um, if there was someone in your life who was your advocate when things went wrong, did you have that? Or was there someone who you could go to empathize with in your pain? And when you didn't have that in your life, it made you feel like you were the only one, that you were alone, and it was closed. And then she, this is another thing I liked, and I'm kind of digressing off of the actual thing, but I do like how she puts at the end of each chapter all the questions that well, I guess it's not at the end, it's kind of in the middle. She still talks a little bit more afterwards, but she has this little section that helps you to look at your memories and ask questions to kind of give you like signals for you to be able to put yourself in places, um, if if this might be something that you relate to. How often do you remember feeling alone or unnoticed? Did anyone ever give you the message that I just said, I wish you'd never been born, right? Um, and then things that you think about yourself later in life would be things like, how do you show love to your friends and family? What is the issues that you care deeply about? And when was the last time that you spoke up to advocate and defend it? Because again, I think in this one, you do tend to lose yourself because you get that feeling of, that you're not worthy or that you're worthless. Is that what you got in this chapter too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, yeah, all those things, and this tends to also be, this person who's groomed to be invisible tends to be like the reliable one. So if you think of like a movie with like three sisters, and one's gregarious and outgoing, maybe, she's the younger one, and the middle one's always getting into trouble, and then there's the oldest daughter, and she's the one who's always making sure that, that the chores get done, and that someone has someone to drive them somewhere, and she never has her needs met, but it's just assumed that she'll do everything. That's kind of like the archetype character, like that. Cinderella, maybe that's a great example. I mean, we're not talking about fairy tales, but she's invisible. Like,
Right.
she just has things thrown at her, and she's just expected to do, moves fluently into the next chapter. The next one is groomed to endure, which is you're stronger than everyone else. You can handle it all. And, this type of woman is groomed to, women groomed to endure are attracted to broken people, and broken people are attracted to us. They confide in us because we seem strong enough to carry their secrets. So when children are groomed to be caretakers, it's very similar to being invisible in some ways. They learn that the whole world needs them to fill that role. So someone who's groomed to endure is going to attract in very dysfunctional relationships because they feel like they can fix them. And that deep fear, they want to hear over and over the message, I need you. And, they end up in uncomfortably controlling, demanding relationships. So this seems almost to me like one of the more dangerous, one of the more dangerous groomings. So they may have been in, like in a dysfunctional household growing up, and they at some point may have just become desensitized to dysfunction because they were around it all the time.
And something
Yeah,
I
they don't really have. Mhm.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
listening.
So
No,
and the
you
thing
got it.
is that I think too what happens in this person as they mature and they get older, that need to feel needed or feeling
Yeah.
needed becomes this thing that makes you actually somehow feel good because you derive some kind of worth from the fact that you feel needed. And then you find yourself in this place like this where you're taking, like you say, you're taking on other people's problems and thinking that you can handle it, and you're groomed to be able to handle that, to endure. So you probably are a person who's been told you're strong, and people need you, and you can do so much, and all of these things like this. For me, when I look at this sounds a lot like my mother. She's one of those people who she just gets it done, period. And I think that this makes a lot of sense when I was reading this, that it kind of, that she is the I can and I will kind of person, and she does. And I think that probably had a lot to do with where she was. It could have even to do, like you were bringing, birth order, and kind of where it fell and where responsibilities fell for her.
It could, yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a dangerous. So
It's interesting.
it's on a light side, it could be the person like your mom who just takes on too much, like the PTA mom, and she's the church mom, and she's the one who's always hosting play dates, and it seems humorous. Like, let's just give, let's just give her one more. Oh, let's let her chair the charity event, the fundraiser. She'll do it. She always does it. Now it seems humorous, but to an extent, because you see movies about the mom who, the perfect mom, the Bad Moms movie, you see like that perfect mom, but she's really the most unhappy. And so this is filling in the gaps. But where it could get into sort of a dangerous situation where on one side it seems like, all right, well, you just need to have your bucket full all the time, is, those are the ones that will never get divorced. I'll never get divorced because they don't, they always, they even if there's abuse involved, I can endure it. I should endure it. I need to endure it. So, those are the, that's definitely one to look out for. If you think that you are somebody who's enduring a lot and you're not giving yourself, a breath to acknowledge, that things aren't right and that this is too much and that you're burning out. Yeah.
And that
I
again
think
leads
that
into the
I agree with everything you said.
and it again leads right into the next one about Groom for Judgment, because I found like this endurance thing was very much my mother, which of course I did get some of this, right? But then the Groom for Judgment leads into that when you brought up the person who stays in a marriage too long, even if it's abusive. I mean, I was in my marriage for 18 years. That doesn't, like now it doesn't compute, but that's what it was. And it was this endurance part, especially because everybody in my vicinity was able to make their marriage work, right? And make their marriage last, and they were able to endure, right? And then on top of it, when you groom for judgment, the message that you heard is you are unforgivable. And so when you're taught or groomed that, let's say, divorce is a sin and you're going to lose God's forgiveness, you're not just losing, you're not disappointing just, your family, right? Now you're talking about the ultimate source, and somehow you have managed to do something so unforgivable that you're going to lose favor because of it. And so that is that grooming of judgment, where you have this heavy burden of this weight of judging and shame and guilt for the moves that you make if you step out of alignment of whatever moral compass you were given as an upbringing, whatever that was.
Yeah. Yeah. And then these women, this is the word. I mean, there's different layers to it, right? But so if you are in that church environment, and this is the thing that I actually circled that stung me a little bit, that the women who judge mask their gossip as prayer requests. So please add Betty to your prayer list because she seems to be having a hard time right now.
Mm.
It's, their voices are sharp and uncompromising. Well, she just needs to pray harder. God can heal anything. And so it's very dismissive. Like we're not actually helping Betty and giving her resources and listening. We're just, prayer and obedience are the primary sign of the groomer's messages. So what is that documentary I was on Netflix I watched recently? Oh gosh, The Polygamist in Utah. It was a multi-tier generational, and the women were just being groomed to be obedient, and they were feeling like they were in the favor of the leader's eyes if they got to be one of his wives. Oh my gosh. But you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about, but
Right.
I don't know the documentary, but I know exactly what you're talking about it. Is everything okay over there? So one of the things I wanted to say in this area of judgment is like what you were saying is that kind of, pray your way out of it, or that passive aggressive type of judgment where the person will feel like if this problem is not resolving, that they have lost some kind of favor somewhere and that they deserve what they're getting because they're not doing something right. So it is a loop that you would get into in the judgment where you feel like, oh, okay, well, so-and-so says to include me in their prayer. So they're praying for me. I'm praying harder. And still this is not resolving. So what's wrong with me? And that's again a way of judging yourself in a situation, or like I said, this whatever upbringing or moral compass that you were brought up in. And so, yeah, it's one of the areas that really tend to, and this is in her questions too, like if you grew up in a community with strong moral codes based on faith or religion, or if most of the influential voices in that community, what did they sound like? What were those voices like? And that's not to say, like she says it in here, and she actually talks a lot about faith throughout her book. She even says it in here. There's nothing wrong with being part of a faith community. It has so much science behind having those communities, having those beliefs. It's when it goes to the level of, one of her questions here, were there social lines in the sand that were drawn to separate you from others, or were you shunned for doing something that broke a religious rule? Those lines tend to be lines that fall outside of maybe what men can understand totally. And you do wind up in this place then of being judged.
Yeah. And there was another quote from that exact, just I think a page later, that said in 2018, there was a video of a woman, I'll just omit her name, who is part of a Baptist, theological seminary. And she had the president of the Baptist Theological Seminary was bragging at the pulpit about what he'd told a woman who came to him for help from her physically abusive husband. This man told her to commit to her marriage and pray. This is a leader in a church. Go commit to your marriage and pray. A while later, she came back with 2 black eyes, and he told the congregation, she said, I hope you're happy. She said, I hope you're happy. And he said, yes, I'm very happy, because he reported that her husband, perhaps feeling guilty for his assault, had come to church for the first time that day. So the head of the church was so happy because she had endured 2 black eyes. It must have been God's will, because it brought her husband to church. So
And so, you
this
know,
is like this is where it gets, yeah, it can get real sticky, with the
and let's just talk in this arena just to get really blunt because I like to just be out there and anybody can chime in and say whatever they want. But I do
yeah.
feel like we've seen so much in this area of being a ground of sexual assault as well. So I don't know if Monica's still on here because I have my screen blown up. Yeah, she is. So she's probably can attest to this that this happens often. Child abuse and child molestation happens a lot in church communities, and we've heard about it in the news. It's not like I'm saying something that is, oh my gosh, a secret. It's not a secret, and it's because these places tend to have perpetrators go to these places. People who know what those beliefs are, know how those people are groomed. So they know how it works. And so they know how to infiltrate. And so that is a breeding ground, right? And until we change the way that those leaders take responsibility in those churches when they are dealing with these situations and their congregants come to them, until we have changes in that area, this is going to continue to be that breeding ground, whether it's from the clergy or even just other congregation members with people in the congregation. Go ahead, Monica. I kind of knew you might wanted to chime in here.
Ooh, honey, thank you, Jesus.
You're
I need.
welcome to come on camera if you want.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
I'll invite you on.
Okay, sweetie. I'm looking a little crazy because I just got off my show, but okay.
That's all right. We don't care. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
There you are.
Thank you, sweetie. So, oh my God. Whoo. Okay, so I'm getting ready to say some real controversy. I hope everybody don't hate me, hate you, hate everybody, but they're gonna
No,
get
it's
over
fine.
it. I'm a devout Christian, love the Lord, Pentecostal charismatic. Jesus is everything to me. But I get so angry because religion has screwed so many people up. I mean, how can a pastor be happy that this woman got her butt beat, but he came to church? I mean, are you kidding me? What type of mixed signals are you putting out into the parishioners and the universe that I got to get my ass beat for you to find Jesus? I mean, that's so crazy to me. I don't understand that.
And then ask the question, like, scripturally, God could use rocks to, profess his name, he says. So he draws people to him. I don't think this is the device he's using to draw people. Okay.
Seriously.
So
Seriously.
yeah.
So I'm so happy. I love the show. Love the tips that you guys are offering, because I think that a lot of times people don't realize how people can be mentally and emotionally groomed and abused to be abused. See, knowledge is power. You know better when you do better when you know better. You can't shift and course correct and change behaviors or even attitudes if you're not aware that your thinking has been misguided or been warped or you've been groomed. So I love this show. It's fantastic.
Thank you. And here's something I think you'll appreciate too. Intuition. Like we usually kind of feel this in our body, and I think Sheila's going to talk to this as I'm saying it, because we feel in our body when this is not matching up. I don't care, even if it's religious, right? Like you're brought up in a faith, you taught God is love, Jesus can overcome. Like she said right here, after all, God, after all, offers grace, and his son Jesus is a radical forgiver. Okay. That's what she says in this line in the book. So how do you line that up with other things that go on? And so you have to understand when those things go on, that's not something God's perpetrating. But
Absolutely.
in the same token, you feel that energy in your body, and we don't listen to it because we've been kind of also groomed to start not listening to that because we're being told to be, obedient.
Yeah.
I know you've got something to say about this, Sheila, because I know for us, it comes up in your body first.
I'm just like, whoa, Monica's energy is like all in there. Like, I'm just listening. Well, I'm reading another book. I'm starting another book on the power of the mind over the body and healing, which is, we could do another hour of a show on that. But there was one more type. There's financial, being groomed, so maybe you can squeeze that one in too. But just to about the body, I have to say this story because I cannot say it. So I heard, so the reason that I found this book, Monica, and everybody else, is because I have a friend who's friends with Elizabeth, the author of this book that we're talking about, Groomed. I know that Peter just came on, and she's a very good storyteller. And one story that she used that was just both sad, but also kind of segues, I think, a little bit into the next chapter or the next type of grooming, which is financial. There's not enough, we don't have enough. And there was a young girl, I don't know how old she was. I want to say 9 or 10. And she was actually trying to get away from an abusive situation in the home. I don't remember if it was a brother or a parent. And, what happens to these girls to get tracked, just like within 24 to 48 hours of being outside the house, they're automatically picked up by somebody, whether it's like a pimp or, it's like within 24 to 48 hours. It's very fast. I mean, Monica probably knows the exact window. And so this girl,
a mile away, right?
But they approach it like, are you hungry? I can take you to go get food to eat. And then, would you like to, I have some place warm for you. So it starts out as like having your basic needs met.
Right.
And then it turns into, will you do this for me, for pleasure? And then I'll give you more food, or I'll give you McDonald's, or I'll give you $10. And so these young girls, they start to say, well, wait, I have value, or at home I was abused and it was awful and I had to run away. But here, at least on the street, I get paid for it. Wow, I get money. That's not so bad. And that is why it's so hard, she said, for them to break out of that cycle. Because, and Monica, you probably know this, but the statistics are, I don't know, I think she said like with her shelters.
Yeah, I was going to say, every time 7 times. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like a 7 to 10 times. Yeah, 7 times. It's like 7 or 8 times for a young girl or a young woman to get, they might get picked up by the police. The police have a relationship with you, Monica, or with, right. Obviously they have a relationship with you, but because you're a detective, but with Elizabeth, who's not a detective, but she's a known figure in the community in Florida. And then they go to the shelter, and then they leave. And the reason you think it's crazy, but the reason they go back and forth so many times is because they have developed this sense of like codependency. This is a way of life. It's a way to earn money. It's something that's become familiar to them in their wiring process. And that's,
Go ahead, Sheila.
No, I'm done.
Something I just wanted to interject real quick is that it's so funny that you say that, because I was just had a call with a lady who is in the process of starting a literally global organization, because she's one of the top human trafficking advocates in the world. And she was saying that if we can really start with the youth, with the young people, when they're in elementary, junior high, way before they get to high school, helping to build their self-esteem, because just like what you were saying, which is how I met Elizabeth. I've traveled all around the country to meet all of these human trafficking advocates and organizations. And that's one of the key things that they have found through data is these girls, they lose their self-esteem. So it becomes a codependency situation where you're just trying to understand, okay, this person is beating you. This person is putting you out, selling your body to 10 and 20 men a day, but you return after the police pull you out of the trafficking and the prostitution, and it takes 7 to 8 times for you to finally leave. A logical person like the three of us is like, what is the matter with you? Are you on Fruit Loops? What is happening here? But it is actually conditioning. It has everything to do with self-esteem. If you don't feel like you have any value, then you look at yourself as being worthless. So it has so much to do with providing the education and building the self-esteem early, where you
Right.
can't be groomed into a situation like that. And I'll be quiet.
Right. Well,
Yeah, no.
you don't have to be
You don't have to
quiet,
say it. I'll be
but
quiet. But I know but that's what Elizabeth said. That was one of the last things she said when she spoke to us. That's the next phase of the Sella Foundation, is to develop the funding and the resources to go into the
Yes.
schools. Now that they know how to turn it around, they're like, but we want to get
Yeah.
even further into the process where it doesn't even take root,
Exactly.
because like
where
what you
you
just said. So that's, everyone's on the same track.
right.
Everyone's on the same
Where you can
wavelength.
prevent it. And I mean, here's the thing, you got to be willing to communicate about it. And so like and this is another thing, I was talking with my daughter about this, you know, when's the right time, even when, so here's the thing, you know, like my kids openly know about the abuse that I went through. We talk about what happened with them. We talk about the molestation that happens with her. When do you talk to your kids, or let your kids know, this is what happened to me. This is why I know these things. These are the things I need you to look for, so that conversation is real and honest. Now, her kids are a little bit young still, but we had this conversation with my niece, who is just turned 17. She was 16. We had this conversation with my niece because she needs to know that this is what happened. This is how it was. And being open is going to allow you to say, hey, if something ever happens, we've had this conversation. We're not going to think you're lying. You can come to us if anything does happen. Hopefully it doesn't, because we're able to allow you to see this. I thought I had open communication with my kids, but I didn't know all the signs. I
Right.
didn't know what all the grooming looked
That
like.
let's talk about the signs. That's important. So what would be, I mean, I know some, but like that's a good way to bring it home. So we can, if you have like, you know, someone, doesn't have to be your kid. It could just be even someone that's friends with your child that comes over. It could be somebody like your friend's kids who you see it, or if someone, or some nieces and nephews at a family reunion. But like, what are some things like that I mean, I know some, but like, what are some things that we should be looking for? Like some changes that would signify that there's some type of maybe sexual abuse going on.
Okay, so first of all, it doesn't have to even be sexual abuse for you to notice that there's grooming going
Yes.
on.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yes, I agree.
Sorry.
I love
Okay.
it. She's always.
Sorry, I gesture. I'd have to, if I sit on my hands, I can't talk. Okay, so,
No, I love it.
but the thing is that the first
I just
thing
know
I
you're getting ready
noticed,
to make a really important point when you start doing your finger like
right,
that.
the very first thing that I remember noticing is isolating. In other
Exactly.
words, pulling the
Yes.
kids away from the parents. Oh, we're just going to hang outside by the bonfire, and it's an adult and all children. And the adult is like pulling away from his, like, hanging out with the group of grown-ups to hang out with the group of children. And it's in a place or in far enough of a distance that there's communication that's going on over there that you don't know what that is being said. And the other thing is, I think, common ground. Oh, we like the same music, that's why. Or we like the same sports, or we both skateboard, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, for my kids, it was music. They all like to listen to the same music, right? And then it was, oh, I'm going to be overly helpful. I'll give your son a job, and that way he can pay for his own cell phone or whatever. Now, this is somebody who's infiltrating your family, so that's kind of where I'm talking from. But you notice all of those things. And then when stuff does happen, behavior changes come into play. The way they dress, the way they act, the way they're, sleeping too much, or any behavior change that's just kind of out of
their grades are suddenly going down at school. They're not involved in sports or activities like they used to be.
And they start having wet dreams where they start, urinating in their sleep. And like you were saying, excessive sleeping. mood changes, all of those
Mm-hmm.
things. And it's
Mm-hmm.
particularly, Deanna, when you find that somebody, and this is a little, it's touchy because sometimes people genuinely care, but you have to
Mm-hmm.
be careful of people that have an overly attentive energy or spirit towards a child.
Right.
There's a difference between, hey, I care about you, let me mentor you, and somebody where it seems a little bit too much attention. That's a warning
When
sign.
right, and when that mentoring always has to happen separated. It
Yes.
doesn't ever happen with everybody,
A group. Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
like separated. Like even if the family's getting together, you're separating yourself from the family
Hmm.
and you're only hanging and this was something that was interesting because somebody else kind of noticed this. Like we'd get together with like 3 or 4 families and then one of the guys in the family were like, I mean, what's the deal? Like he's always outside now. Like, because it was different for him too. Used to always hang
Okay.
inside, joke around with us,
Hmm.
talk with us. Now all of a
Hmm.
sudden he's always outside, never with the grown-ups. What's
Hmm.
going on?
Yeah.
It was a shift. It was a shift. But it's subtle and you think, oh well, I mean, he's literally had a conversation with me that he wanted to help out. It it's subtle and it's very under the radar. It's
It's like
sly.
it's
You
like
have to really
it's
be
like
paying attention.
it's like oh, this is another. We had to watch these videos. I mean, when my kids were in like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, or even when my son was on a sailing team, because the parents could be chaperones at any point. We were all required to watch these videos about the
Hmm.
signs,
Hmm.
both to educate ourselves and also to be aware of our own behavior and our own actions towards the
Mhm.
kids. But it's escalating. But there was in all the education I've gotten that we were required to watch as adults. There was a name for this program. It's all connected. So I was saying this at the beginning. So it may start out as, oh, just come over and sit in my lap, like this, and then it'll turn into like what you said, like, oh, let me offer to help you. You think
Yeah.
you're something's wrong on your cell phone
Yeah.
and you can't get your Wi-Fi. Show me, like, let's go to your bedroom and you show me how to do that. And
Yeah.
then it turns into something else, like, I'm feeling a little hot. I'm just going to take off my shirt. Like the video showed us like exactly how it starts out, and you have to be careful because sometimes the victim is somebody who's being separated from the group. So the kid that's being bullied or the kid
Hmm.
that's being left out, like let's say they're on like a Boy Scouts trip and there's a boy sitting alone at a picnic table while all his peers are off doing activity because he just feels left out. He has, like you said, Monica, low self-esteem. And
Hmm.
so the adult chaperone goes over to encourage the child to open up and what's going on. And so there's an emotional connection going on, and
Yeah.
that parent or that leader is establishing a like a codependent. So the child is
Hmm.
becoming codependent because nobody loves me, nobody likes me, but this parent or this leader wants to listen to me, and
Right.
they
Right.
think I'm valuable and they think I'm important. So I think
So
that's
that
where
child was groomed
Monica's.
to be invisible, and now that child is being picked up on by a perpetrator who knows they were groomed to be invisible, and they know exactly how to turn that and flip that.
And I think,
And the thing
Sheila,
is, you
and
don't turn it around. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, you go ahead, sweetie. Finish your thought. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, if that doesn't stop and we become adults, it still happens. Like, then we become men or women who date people who take advantage of us financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually, or even worse, we end up in a long-term marriage where there's domestic violence in the
Hmm.
marriage and you can't get out. And so, like Deanna was saying, that's all
Yeah.
I want to say. Like, you have to, it just continues. The cycle never ends unless you decide to end
And,
it.
and and I think you guys will agree with me. And if you don't, that's fine. But what I've noticed in my research, and then like I said, I used to be in law enforcement before. I've been a private detective for 25 years. I don't have any children, but I have 3 nephews and literally help raise them. And we taught them early in science and data, and all of these psychologists and forensic psychologists that I've talked to and work with around the country with other investigations. They always say, teach your children as early as possible. Don't teach them the little cute little words, PP and VJJ. They say the words, your penis, your vagina.
Mm-hmm.
Also teach them early that when it is inappropriate, like my little nephews, they're big guys now, but when they were with me, auntie would talk to them about their penis. Nobody is supposed to touch you on your penis. I mean, I started when they could understand what their penis was. Okay. So because
Well, and that's
if
why I
you
said,
you have to teach them early, and it's the same thing with girls, because I had an uncle that did what you guys were talking about, where he used to always want me to sit on his lap. And one time I went in to hug him, and when he kissed me, because my family is like what you were saying, Deanne. I came from a family where we kiss each other. We kiss on the mouth,
mm-hmm,
bibbidi bop. It's not a big deal. But he stuck his tongue in my mouth, and I was
mm,
10. And he stuck his tongue in my mouth like he was French kissing me. And I remember going and telling my mother. My parents immediately banned him from our home. He was never
mm,
allowed to come back to our home again. He was, and I told her, I said, Mommy, and I was 10. And I said,
mm,
Uncle blah, 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 I said, he sat me on his lap. And I said, when he went to hug me, I said, Mommy, he put his tongue in my mouth. Now I'm 10. But I know that's not normal for an adult to put his tongue in my mouth and swirl it
mm,
around. That's not
mm,
normal.
mm,
But because my parents had talked to me about what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate, I wasn't afraid to come to them and tell them.
mm,
We have to make it okay for our kids,
Right.
whether they're 4, 5, 6, 7. My babies, my nephews knew nobody touches me on my penis, nobody touches me on my behind, nobody touches my, and I'm telling you, they were like 3, 4, 5. So by the time we would go out somewhere, I was one of those aunties where they went in the restroom with auntie. I didn't let them go in the restroom by themselves until they were old enough to be able to physically defend themselves.
yeah.
So,
No, I agree with that. I had these conversations with my daughter too. Here's the
mhm,
thing. You got to look at also ages, because at 13, after
mhm.
being groomed for a little while, at 13, she was less likely to tell me. And
Okay.
you see, so like we had all those conversations. We're very open
Mm,
about it. We have relatives who had gone through it. She knew it. She knew that.
right.
It still happened.
Wow.
And there was this whole part of her that stopped her from saying anything because her brother was best friends with him. He loves
Wow.
me. Am I breaking up my aunt's marriage? She had this guilt, and this
Yeah.
grooming for judgment
Hmm.
played into that.
Gotcha.
And that
Gotcha.
grooming for me played into remaining in an abusive relationship, modeling that it was okay to accept abusive behavior.
Wow.
So you see what I'm saying? So this is the thing, getting this information
Hmm.
about grooming in the way you're bringing your kids up unintentionally, the
Right.
authorities in school and the way they're teaching your kids what is okay and what is not okay, and how to
Absolutely.
be obedient, the way you're doing it can be something that makes it so that your child doesn't come to you.
Yeah. And I think that's important. I see, I come from a little bit of a different era where my parents were not concerned about being my friends. And
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes that could be a challenge in the parenting style. My parents did
Mm-hmm.
not give a hooty good ass about whether they were my friend. They were like,
Yeah.
I'm here to guide you, direct you, educate you, and make sure you go grow up and go out into the
Mm-hmm.
world to do great things. I'm not your friend. So I think
Right.
that plays a part in it too, because when you
Mm-hmm.
respect and you understand that they love you and that they support you. See, I knew that I could talk to my mom and dad about anything. There was
Mm-hmm.
never anything that was off limits.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's parenting style is different, where some kids are afraid to come and tell their mom and dad the truth because, again, like what you said, she thought that it was going to interfere with the friendship or, the home life or whatever. It has everything to do with teaching your kids that there's nothing you can say or do that will harm the love
Right.
that I have for you or that we have for our home.
Right. And so there it lies. There it is. So if you're groomed for judgment,
Mhm.
then you're also groomed to know that love is conditional.
Mm.
Period. Period.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
based on whether you are maintaining approval in a certain moral code.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
can
That's
I
a
just
big,
say
that's,
something like just,
yes,
we've talked
Yes.
for over an hour. This is so important. I know some people have come, some people have left, some people will watch the replay, but for anyone watching, and I hope that you all agree, you see our names on here. You can find us on here. I'm sure if you put our names in on social media platforms, you can find us. If you are in a situation and you don't know how to get out and you want help navigating and finding resources, or you just want to confide in someone privately, just, to talk about what to do next, reach out to any one of us. I mean, as an
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
adult woman or
24/7,
if you're a man.
365. I'm always here. I mean, I travel all over the world. I work around the country. I have a whole team. Yes. Because, and I'm going to say this, and Sheila, I think I'm speaking for you and Deanna. I think that we're sisters from another mister, some kind of way.
Yeah,
I don't know how I
I
missed you guys, but you guys are my sisters from another mister. But
There you go.
I agree.
you have to show up for people. I get so angry when people say, "Oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm a specialist in this and that." And then when people reach out, you don't call them back. They can't get in contact with you. They got to talk to 5 assistants before they get to you. That's not who we are. If anybody needs any of us, we're here. We're
Absolutely.
Yeah.
here.
All my clients have my cell phone number, and I
Same with
always
me.
respond same day,
Yeah.
if not within a couple hours. So
Yeah.
I'm not giving my cell phone out on here, but you guys can find me, and I'll give you my phone number.
Give us that cell phone, Sheila. Come on,
Yeah, I
girl.
want to shout it out.
I know it should just be a little chick girl on the bottom. Wow. But okay, but let's be honest, like even on these shows, right? You don't know, I'm not saying on this show, but even on these platforms, there's people watching and we don't always know what their intentions are. So,
Very true. Very true. Very
it's
true.
private,
Yeah,
but we know the good ones and they'll find us.
That's
for
right.
sure.
That's right. All right. Well, we're not going to keep this going much longer. I just want to bring up the very last one. We only touched on it for 1 second. This one on financial fear. And I think that this is something that also, like you were saying, Sheila, plays a part. It says, this message was that there's not enough for you. And it's that scarcity mindset. And it's the mindset that if you feel like this works in combination, I feel like with other ones, it's not like to me, this one's not a standalone. This one's more of if you feel invisible and you feel like you have to disappear, and then somebody shows up and says, but I'm going to make you visible and also provide for you. It becomes this like you said, it creates that codependency wheel, and it puts you in this place. But if you've always thought your whole life that everything is scarce, then that is a way of grooming, and it is a way of creating some form of codependency,
Sure.
or reliance on other people other than yourself. When really, like I said at the beginning of the show, we are all capable of healing ourselves. We all have within us what we need. Now, I'm not saying we don't need guidance. We don't need the coaches, the mentors, the therapists, the shelters that provide the programs, because we
Right.
need to have the understanding. We need the guidance so that we can tap into the knowledge. But once we do, the work that needs to be done is in you. And that's why it takes 7 times, right? Because they got to come back and realize, they leave they feel like, oh, light bulb, and they leave. I got this. Oh my God, I'm great. And then they come back because they found themselves in that situation again. And it's the same with addiction. It's the same with a lot of situations. It takes some time for you to be able to recognize that you need the guidance and be willing to do that inner work.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It takes a little bit of work to unravel, reparent, and recondition yourself.
So, like, what are the chances that I went to an event at the last minute 5 or 6 weeks ago where I heard this person talk and bought her book and read it within 2 days? I didn't know that this was Domestic Violence Awareness Month when I recommended the book to you for us to use just like a week and a half ago. And it ties in the end of the month. And then Monica hops on and knows you really well.
Yeah.
And she knows Elizabeth and all
Yeah.
about the book. Like, what are the chances? Like, I was
know
just thinking
Elizabeth
about
really,
that.
really well. I traveled to Florida, spent 3 days with her, went to the safe house, went through her program, went through the whole 9 years. So I know her very
It's
well.
amazing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.
So now
I
you
love
don't
it.
even have to use my connection to get her to
No,
come
I
on,
don't.
Deanna. You can use now you can just say Monica.
Right.
Forget about
Well, I did. I texted her, but it was so late because when I sent the message originally, I actually somehow didn't send it. This happens to me a lot. Whatever. I type it and it doesn't go anywhere. So I don't know. It's just having grandkids today. Today's my grandkid day. So we're
Blame it
gonna
on
just
the
blame it on that.
grandkids. Blame it on
That's
the
right. Blame it on the
grandkids.
grandkids. They're not here. So anyway, so but
That's okay.
yeah,
I
so
had
I
noise.
love
I had noise tonight. You heard my daughter making dinner, so I provided the noise for you tonight. So I was
Okay, good. Perfect. Feels
thinking
right at home.
graciously.
It's fine. Here's something I wanted to bring up to you guys because, I don't know if you want to show up next week or not, but I'm having a panel next week. I know we can only have 4 people on screen, but I'm having like a panel next week of 2 guests that were on the show before. One in September and one in this month. One had childhood trauma and it all came out when she had her kid and went through postpartum depression. And for
Wow.
9 months, all her childhood trauma just came back. And it was a huge battle. I mean, I don't think I would say she's completely through it, but she's seeing light. And some of the things that, so we were going to get on and talk more about how that felt personally and which one of these grooming categories would they put in their, own personal lives through their stories. And so I'm going to have them talking on here, but I mean, would love like participation and input too, because I think that, and then the other girl, same situation. She went through domestic violence and was told that, that she needed to try to forgive, and see if she could, make her marriage work because, it's not really grounds for divorce. Only, going
Wow.
outside of marital bed is ground for divorce. So anyway,
Oh
so there's that.
Lord. Girl, that's a whole nother hour show. Ooh.
Yes, which is why it's next week. But anyway, so we're kind of just going to have a panel and kind of go into some of that stuff too. So,
Well, I always try to support you, Deanna. My show is at 8. So usually when I get finished with my show, I pop over to support your show.
I know.
So
I see.
I'll do the same thing next week. Yeah, for
All
sure.
right, perfect. I see you in here, and I do the same unless I'm like this today. I walked in the door like literally 10 minutes before my show.
Yeah.
I drove like 5 hours today. It's been a day. It's fine.
Wow.
So,
Well,
but
you had a great
anyways,
show. Sheila was amazing.
you.
You had a fantastic show.
Sheila's always amazing.
I've been wearing the same thing. I work for the Chicago Bears today. I worked on all the players, and like I'm wearing like all my. I've been like this since 8 o'clock this morning.
I'm gonna just say, be honest, that I have never been a big Chicago Bears fan. They've had a couple of games where they treated our Saints fans pretty badly, but last night I was totally cheering for Chicago, and they won. So there you go.
All right.
Because I can cheer for Chicago when they play the Patriots.
I'm not a football fan. I just, this is what I wear for work. I do my work and I go home, but there are really nice people. I get to say really,
yeah.
I work on the coaches too. The coaches are just really nice humans, and they have to go. They get put through a lot, to get those games won. And not just for the Bears. I'm just saying now I know what coaches going through in general. So if you guys are watching football, like, be nice to those coaches and, like, say good things. Even if the team doesn't win, don't berate the coaches. It's not their fault. So.
All right. Well, you don't watch football, so you just won't know. I'm just saying. I'm not always nice. Those are different lines. Anyway. All right. Well, look, I really appreciate you guys coming on tonight. I see you. You're beautiful. You guys are just amazing individuals. And until next time, you guys, I want you to love each other, connect with each other. We need each other, and shine on. We're gonna be okay. All right, I'm gonna bring good old Waitbot up here and try to shut everything down.
Okay.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks, Monica, for showing up. Thanks, Sheila, so much for doing
pleasure.
the show with me. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.